Historiography is the study of how history has been studied. For me, it's a really interesting aspect of studying history. Not just studying history, but actually studying how history has been studied over a period of time. The other interesting thing about studying historiography is this gets into the interpretive nature of history. Kind of you're just the facts, just the truth and the facts. Well, people emphasize different things. The facts, quote unquote, change, so to speak. And so what are the facts? You argue over that. Different eras have different theses or interpretations of the past. Every generation reassesses the past to see how the past relates to them. There's a couple of examples I'll give you here really quick to demonstrate this. Reconstruction. Before the 1960s, Reconstruction was generally taught in U.S. history classrooms as overall a negative, corrupt, unconstitutional extension and abuse of federal power. Evil carpetbaggers came to the South and oppressed the South and forced civil rights on the South and went too far in enforcing civil rights. It was a wholly corrupt time period where the South was oppressed and under the thumb of the federal government. So before the 1960s, that's about what it'd be taught. Between the 60s and the 80s, you started to have a reassessment. The civil rights movement in the 60s caused historians to kind of reassess the 1960s. Today, in the early 21st century, Reconstruction is taught as overall an attempt to enforce civil rights, but it didn't go far enough. So that's kind of the main thing on the issue of civil rights. More traditional explanations of the Reconstruction period is that it went too far. It went too far in enforcing civil rights. Today's historiography argues it didn't go far enough. So, what are the facts? Did Reconstruction go too far in enforcing African American or black civil rights, or did it not go far enough? Different generations disagree on that. World War I is another example. If you study history textbooks and history books just after World War I in the 1920s, World War I was great. We should have gotten involved, absolutely. Should have helped out. Should have kept Germany from dominating Europe, right? In the 1930s, with the Great Depression, you had an American society that was more skeptical of foreign interventions, especially in Europe. Well, guess what? Historians started taking a negative view of why we got into World War I, that we shouldn't have gotten involved. And in fact, it got so anti-getting involved in World War I that Congress in 1935 to 37 held congressional hearings on why we got involved in World War I, and they brought in historians to go over why. And they decided that we got involved in World War I because warmongers wanted to make money, so we got us involved in this war. So guess what Congress did? They passed the neutrality acts that would keep us out of the next war, right? And then after World War II, all of a sudden it changed again. Yes, after World War II, the historiography with textbooks and said, well, yes, absolutely. For the second time in 30 years, Germany tried to dominate Europe. So absolutely, we should have gotten involved. That's historiography. What are the facts, right? Should we have gotten involved in World War I or II? Different generations argue differently. The decade or so after the World War I, yes, we should have. The late 30s into the 40s, no, we should not have. And then after World War II, the historiography flipped again, right? And so, the last quick example is John Quincy Adams. Historians, in general, love President Andrew Jackson. From the 1830s when he was president, even into today. Historians have generally worshipped Andrew Jackson as president. Well, who was Andrew Jackson's main political rival and opponent when he was before and while he was president? John Quincy Adams, who was the president right before Andrew Jackson was. Well, so guess what? Traditionally, historians have not liked John Quincy Adams. The main reason, he was a political opponent of our hero, John Quincy or Andrew Jackson. Right? You get it? Historians decided in that narrative, historians decided that Andrew Jackson was the hero. Therefore, who's the villain? John Quincy Adams. Right? Historians do that. They create a narrative. Who's the hero and who's the villain? FDR the hero, Hoover the villain. And so in this case, Andrew Jackson the hero, John Quincy Adams the villain. So for a long time, historians generally didn't view John Quincy Adams as a good president. Well, guess what? As we get into the 80s, the 90s, into the early 2000s, and now into 2025, historians have reassessed Andrew Jackson, right? Historians are starting to kind of reassess Jackson. What are the three strikes against Andrew Jackson that early 21st century historians and Americans would not like? Strike one, Andrew Jackson owned slaves. Strike two, Andrew Jackson thought Native Americans should be forced to live in Oklahoma. Strike three, Andrew Jackson didn't think women should vote. All three of those political opinions are extremely inappropriate today. You get it? Historians today are reassessing Jackson in light of current day political opinions. So Andrew Jackson's kind of getting reassessed a little bit. Well, guess what? Guess what's happened with John Quincy Adams? He has gone up in American historians' estimation. So the point about 15, 20 years ago, there was a biography written about John Quincy Adams. How did it describe John Quincy Adams? That John Quincy Adams was the most qualified man to be president up to his time, including Jackson. And so that's an excellent example of historiography, of every generation kind of reassessing Andrew Jackson. And the byproduct of reassessing Jackson in the early 21st century is John Quincy Adams all of a sudden becomes from, no, not a good president, how dare he oppose Jackson, to the most qualified man to be president up to his time. There you have it, historiography.